How old farmers prune tomatoes for a heavier harvest? The Farmstead method worth bringing back. Most home gardeners think they understand what happened when their tomato plants exploded with foliage, but produced half the fruit they expected. They blame the seed company, or the weather, or maybe they fed the plant too much nitrogen. They don't realize they actually made the opposite mistake. They pruned too little, or pruned wrong, or didn't understand which kind of tomato they were even growing. And here is the revelation that will change how you harvest tomatoes for the rest of your gardening life. The way you remove material from the plant between June and August determines not just how many tomatoes you get, but which ones actually ripen before the first frost. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, I am going to show you the exact cut that turns a harvest of green fruit into a harvest of ripe ones. If you have ever grown tomatoes, hit the bell so you do not miss the method. And in the comments below, tell me honestly, does your tomato patch typically give you the yield you are hoping for, or do you find yourself pulling green fruit off the vine in September? I want to hear your experience. Wait, this part requires your full attention. The methods I am about to walk you through are the foundation of everything we teach here on this channel, and if you want the complete system, the timing charts, the differences between heirloom and determinate varieties, the disease prevention side of pruning, the greenhouse notes from Pennsylvania Dutch growers, all of that is in our detailed guide available in the description and pinned in the comments below. That guide covers the mechanisms behind why this works, not just the steps. It is worth studying if you want to understand the full picture. For now, though, let me show you what actually happens when you neglect this one skill. The problem starts in your mind before it starts in the garden. You plant a tomato seedling in May or June. It is 6, maybe 8 inches tall. You stake it, you water it. Throughout June, it grows and grows more, and by the first week of July, you walk out and the plant has already reached the top of your cage or stake. You think this is wonderful. More plant must mean more tomatoes. So you leave it alone, you keep watering, keep weeding, and the plant keeps going sideways and up and in every direction simultaneously. By mid-July, the plant is a fortress of greenery. Thick stems, dozens of branch shoots called suckers growing from every joint where a leaf attaches to the main stem. Lower leaves that are starting to touch the soil. Inner canopy so dense that if you reach in to feel for tomatoes, your hand comes out with dirt on it because there is barely any light penetrating to the fruit. You have created a perfect environment for disease. The lower leaves sit against the soil where fungal spores live. The humidity inside all that foliage stays high even after rain, and the few tomatoes that exist are shaded so completely that even when they turn color, they are never sweet. They are pale pink at best. This is what most home gardeners experience, and it feels backwards to them because everything they learned about plants says that more leaves make more energy. More green tissue means faster growth. To prune aggressively, to remove that foliage, feels like they are hurting the plant. They are stealing its strength. But that is not how tomatoes work. A tomato plant left to grow like a wild plant does not optimize for fruit production. It optimizes for survival and reproduction through spreading and competing for light against other plants around it. In nature, a tomato does not have a farmer. It does not have stakes or water on a schedule. It is racing against drought and disease and other plants. The gardener who understands the old methods knows something very different. He knows that a tomato plant is not a wildflower. It is a crop. It responds to intentional removal of certain parts. Every sucker you pinch off before it becomes a thick branch is energy that stays in the plant, instead of being split between 20 different stems. Every lower leaf you remove before late July is a disease vector you have eliminated. Every tip you cut off in August, when you have no intention of letting new fruit develop before frost, is permission to the plant to pour everything into ripening what is already growing. This is the secret that Lancaster County wives kept for 100 years. Not because it was hidden, because it required patience, because it meant spending time in the patch in July when you would rather be anywhere else, because it looked wrong to people who had never been taught. My mother learned it from her mother. I learned it from watching my father work his tomato rows same time every July, doing the same careful removals. The yield difference between a pruned patch and an unpruned one on the same soil, with the same seed, grown the same number of feet apart, is genuinely striking. Not 30% more, not even 50%, sometimes double, 2 pounds of ripe tomatoes instead of 1 pound of green ones you are trying to ripen on the windowsill in October. Now, before we go much further, I need to pause here for a second. This is the part where most gardeners miss the actual mechanism of what is happening. The guide we have put together covers all the signals, all the patterns of when to prune and how deep to go. And frankly, that knowledge separates the people who get 30% more fruit from the people who get 100% more. If you want the full breakdown of those timing signals and the exact cuts for determinate versus indeterminate varieties, that guide is in the description and pinned in the comments. It goes much deeper than we can here. The reason this works comes down to light and energy. A tomato plant in full unpruned growth is spending calories on tissue it cannot feed. The inner leaves get no sun. They photosynthesize at maybe 10% of their capacity. Some of them are already dying from shade stress before disease even arrives. Meanwhile, the plant is still paying the biological costs to maintain them, to move water up to them, to defend them against insects. It is like paying rent on a warehouse you are not using. When you remove those lower leaves and thin the canopy strategically, you redirect that energy. The plant stops trying to be a bush and starts trying to be productive. The remaining leaves get better light. The air moves through the plant instead of stagnating. Moisture does not sit on the foliage as long, which is exactly when fungal spores germinate. You also stop the splash of soil-borne spores from hitting those lower leaves in the first place, because those leaves are gone. The timing of this matters more than most people realize. You do not strip the plant bare in June when it is still establishing itself. You start removing lower leaves once the plant is waist-high and the fruit has already set. That usually falls somewhere between mid-June and early July, depending on your location and planting date. You do it gradually over the course of 2 or 3 weeks, removing maybe 1 to 3 leaves per visit. This is not a once-and-done operation. It is a series of small interventions. The reason old farmers did this in July was not romantic timing. It was practical. By mid-July, the threat of frost damage from aggressive pruning has passed. The plant has established its fruit load for the season. The disease pressure from below is starting to climb, and you have time to let the plant recover before the real heat stress of August arrives. If you prune too late into August, you might shock the plant right when it needs to focus all its energy on ripening what it has already set. There is also the question of which leaves to remove first. Start from the bottom. The lowest leaves are always the first to be touched by soil splash, the first to lose light as the plant fills in, and the first to show disease. Remove them completely. Work your way up the stem, removing any leaf or branch that is growing inward or downward, anything that is not getting direct sun, anything that is shading fruit. The goal is to create a plant that is open enough that you could throw a baseball through the middle of it and it would pass clean. For indeterminate varieties, you also want to remove the suckers as they form. These are the shoots that grow in the crotch between the main stem and a lateral branch. Left alone, they become full branches, and each one is competing for the plant's energy. A plant with 8 or 9 suckers growing is spending resources on stems and leaves instead of fruit. Remove them when they are small, when they snap off with a thumbnail. Wait until they are woody, and you are cutting deeper into the plant than you need to. This is one of those small habits that the old gardeners did without thinking about it. They just moved through the patch and pinched suckers, the same way you might brush aside a cobweb. The whole operation takes maybe 3 to 5 minutes per plant if you know what you are doing. For a patch of 10 plants, that is an hour of work, spread across a month. Not intensive, not complicated, just consistent. The gardeners in Lancaster County did this as naturally as they watered. It was part of the rhythm of July, and the yield difference between doing it and not doing it was too obvious to ignore. Once you have the sucker removal locked in, the second part of the old method kicks in around mid-July. This is when you turn your attention to the lower canopy, the leaves that sit closest to the soil. By now, those bottom branches have been trailing through the mulch, absorbing splash during rain, collecting dust and fungal spores from the ground. Early blight does not fall from the sky. It lives in the soil. It waits on plant debris, on dead leaves, on the organic matter you turn in every spring. Rain splashes it upward onto the lowest leaves first, then it spreads. The leaf yellows, spots appear, the leaf dies and drops. The plant loses its foundation. Old farmers understood this. They did not wait for disease to show up. They removed the bottom 12 to 18 inches of foliage before the blight arrived. Clean air could move through. Splashing rain stayed below the canopy. The plant kept its leaves where they actually produced fruit. A farmer's wife in Pennsylvania might have never read a word about fungal spores, but she knew that plants that looked like umbrellas got sick. Plants that looked like lollipops stayed healthy. That knowledge came from watching, from losing crops, from paying attention to which plants made it to August and which did not. The timing matters here. You do not strip the plant bare in June. You do this in stages, starting around the 4th week of growth, removing 3 or 4 leaves at a time from the bottom. By mid-July, the lowest 2 feet of the plant should be clean stem. Open air, no leaves touching soil. No disease vector waiting to climb upward. This single change honestly will cut your disease pressure by more than half. Not all the way to 0. Life is not that clean, but halfway. Before we continue, I need you to understand something that separates this work from the gardening advice you might see elsewhere. What we are talking about is not just technique, it is a logic, a way of reading the plant, of understanding what it needs in order to thrive without fighting disease and weakness. The patterns that made this work on a commercial farm in Lancaster County make it work in your raised beds today. The ebook guide I mentioned earlier goes deep into those patterns, why this works, not just how to do it. You will find it in the description or in the pinned comment. It is a paid resource, worth every cent if you want to move beyond copying methods and actually understand the mechanics behind them. Now, here is the part where most home gardeners make a mistake. They prune, they remove disease, they do the work correctly through July and August, and then they stop. The plant keeps growing. September arrives, new flowers appear on the branches. The plant is putting out fresh growth that will never ripen before frost. Never. The first hard freeze in your region will kill those flowers and those tiny green fruits before they ever see sun as ripe tomatoes. The old method does one final thing. Around 30 to 40 days before your average first frost date, you top the plant. You cut off the very tip of the main stem. You cut off the developing flower clusters. You remove the last of those hopeful new shoots. This seems like waste. It feels like you are throwing away fruit. You are not. You are redirecting the plant's energy. Every resource the plant has left goes into ripening what is already on the vine, not into making new fruit that will freeze. A plant topped on August 20th in a region with a September 25th frost date will push every bit of sugar into those green tomatoes. They color faster, they ripen fuller. By the time frost hits, you have ripe fruit still on the plant, not green marbles hanging there. You harvest for weeks longer. The yield per fruit goes up, the flavor improves, and the entire operation, this topping cut at the end of the season, takes 30 seconds per plant. Farmers did this without fail, without question. A tomato plant left to grow into September was a waste of soil and water. There was no sentiment about it. You topped it. You harvested what would ripen. You pulled the plant out. Next year, better soil, better spacing, and the same logic applied again. This is the secret I promised you at the beginning of this video. The reason old farmers got heavier harvests was not because they had better seed or richer soil or more rain. It was because they understood one fundamental truth that most modern gardeners have completely reversed. A tomato plant's natural instinct is survival, not production. Left alone, it will sprawl and shade itself and spend its energy making new growth right up until frost. The farmer who knew better made 3 deliberate choices. Remove the side shoots before they become competing branches. Clear the lower leaves before disease climbs up from the soil. Top the plant when the calendar tells you there is no time left for new fruit to ripen. Those 3 acts, practiced faithfully across the season, transform a plant from a green monument into a fruit factory. And the math is simple. A neglected plant in your garden might give you 30 pounds of fruit across the season, hidden in shade, some of it split or diseased or still green when frost arrives. That same plant, pruned and topped with intention, gives you 45 to 50 pounds. Ripe, sound, earlier, lasting weeks longer into the fall. Same variety, same bed, same water. The only difference is labor that takes perhaps 2 hours across the entire growing season. 2 hours to add 50% more tomatoes to your table. My grandmother kept a small notebook. Nothing elaborate, just dates and varieties and notes on what worked. One entry from July 1962 said simply, "Determinate plants will give you what they can. Indeterminate plants will give you what you teach them to give." She had no chemistry degree, no extension office certification. She had raised tomatoes for 40 years and understood that the plant is not your adversary or your partner. It is a tool in your hands, and like any tool, it performs exactly as you direct it. Pruning is that direction. Here is what you do this week. Walk to your tomato patch. Look at each plant. If the plant is an indeterminate variety, and you can confirm this by checking your seed packet or the label where you bought it, begin removing side shoots if you have not already. Do not remove them all at once. Take 3 or 4 per plant, the ones that are competing most directly with the main stem. Pinch them off when they are small, no more than 4 inches long. If you wait until they are thick and woody, you damage the main stem and set the plant back. Second, look at the lower 8 to 12 inches of foliage. Any leaves that are touching soil or are heavily shaded, remove them. Use sharp pruning shears. Make a clean cut. Do not tear. Torn leaves attract disease. Finally, count backward from your first frost date. If frost arrives in 6 weeks or fewer, top your plants this week. Cut off the top 4 to 6 inches of the main stem. Every side shoot that will emerge from that point will be removed in a week's time. You are training all the plant's remaining energy into fruit that is already set. Do this once. Do it correctly. Watch what happens in the next 3 weeks. Your plants will look thinner. The canopy will open. Sunlight will reach fruit that has been hidden all summer. That light does the work. It drives sugar into the fruit. It prevents the humidity that breeds disease, and the plant, suddenly able to breathe, will shift from panic growth into focused ripening. The old way worked because it was based on observation, not ideology. Farmers did not prune because they read about it in a magazine, or because someone told them it was trendy. They pruned because they had seen, year after year, that plants left to their own devices did not feed the family as well as plants that were shaped by intention. That is all pruning is. Intention applied with simple tools and a clear calendar. Plant your tomatoes this way next year. Prune them this way this year if you still have time. And if your plants are already overgrown and you think it is too late, it is not. A hard pruning now, even in late August or early September, will still give you more ripe fruit by frost than leaving them alone. You will lose a few green tomatoes. You will gain weeks of harvest from fruit that actually ripens. The plant will thank you, even if it does not know it. Thank you for watching. If this has been useful, please subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you do not miss the next video. And I would genuinely appreciate it if you left a comment below sharing how your tomato patch has done this season, whether you pruned or not, and what you plan to try next year. That feedback helps me make videos that matter to you. Until next time, grow something worth eating.